Carolina, I can't speak about other states. In South Carolina, it's relatively, and I'm going to say relatively with a grain of salt, easy to buy houses by some creative techniques. One of them is called subject to.
So what did you experience firsthand in the middle of last recession?
Oh, yeah, I was holding on to houses a lot longer, and a couple of my rehab flips that were supposed to be actually turned into long-term rentals, and they were never meant to be. I did face some cash flow issues, but remember, I was single back then. One thing I did was, when I was a poor student in college, I became very creative with buying cheap macaroni and cheese and ramen noodles and living off of them. And I pretty much went back to that. Fortunately, I didn't have a whole lot of, I wasn't in that lifestyle, I gotta have the biggest, best thing. In fact, if you look at my car now, okay, it's like a 12-year-old car. I'm gonna run that thing into the ground. I'm not big on these frills. What does Rich Dad call it? Doodads. I'm not big on the doodads. Okay, so I think that's probably what saved my hide. Now, I still lost quite a bit of money during that time, but I think it's pretty much saved my hide back then.
Don't load up on liabilities, right? Stack the asset column.
That's right. And have your assets, have your money generating assets pay for your doodads, if you will. Too many people put it on credit, and that's a bad idea.
Absolutely. So let's talk about your business and your real estate investing strategy in the middle of this recession, right? If this go around looks anything like last time, there can be some nuggets that can be pulled out of that.
Well, what I learned also is in South Carolina, I can't speak about other states. In South Carolina, it's relatively, and I'm going to say relatively with a grain of salt, easy to buy houses by some creative techniques. One of them is called subject to. Okay, it's basically an informal loan assumption. You're basically and bluntly saying, you're telling the house seller, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I want you to deed me your house and leave the mortgage in your name. Okay, if done right, it's legal, and frankly, it puts no liability on you, as the investor. So, and it's a lot, in my opinion, it's a lot easier to do than these rehabs and stuff, because you don't have to babysit contractors and whatnot. The idea is what you're doing is, it's usually an owner-occupant that needs to sell. What you're doing is you're sliding them out of the house and you're putting someone else into the house on the existing financing. So I really like that now. It's, in my opinion, it's the easiest and quickest way to make a buck in real estate, other than wholesaling.
So, looking back at your current portfolio, and we've had a lot of discussions and stuff. Now, you built pretty much your whole real estate holdings through the subject to method, right?
Most of it. Yeah. Some were paid off pure cash and whatnot. And the only mortgage I did have in my name, I actually sold one of my more problematic rentals and paid that one off. But yeah, most of them are held subject to, and they're technically sales, but in reality, they're rentals.
Yeah. Yeah. So your subject to strategy: acquire the property, right? Existing financing stays with the seller, right? Property is deeded into your name. What is your exit strategy? Are you holding that as a rental, or are you wrapping that and financing that to somebody on the backside as an owner finance?
It's technically what you're saying there. It's really more of a wrap. See, the problem in South Carolina is when an owner-occupant, which is how I acquired most of them, when an owner-occupant leaves the house, and once the county figures that out, property taxes at least triple,
right?
Sometimes more. So what I do now is I take a person who wants a home, okay, and obviously you have to pre-qualify them, make sure they're not deadbeats, You put them in and you give them the deed so they're now owner-occupants, okay, and then I tag a mortgage onto that to keep them accountable.
Right.
So you have an owner-occupant in the home so the taxes don't rise, and that's my general model now.
Awesome. And so your goal is to acquire a property that once you wrap it, right, to the new buyer, you have enough cash flow in between that you're making the difference between the mortgage plus taxes, insurance, and whatever this person is paying you including mortgage, taxes, insurance,
That's
right?
correct. That's
What does that number look like? Like, are you aiming for, let's say, $300 a month? What is that magic number for you that it's like, hey, this looks like a good deal on paper?
Ideally, you want, in my opinion, you want, if you can, sometimes you can't, okay, at least 150 a month, okay? But realistically, because remember, you're now a note holder, okay? Now, it doesn't always occur, but in theory, once you put a note on as a second, a wraparound, if you will, theoretically, you should just be able to sit at home. It's mailbox money.
Right.
In reality, as you know, sometimes you have to go out there and do a little prodding.
Yeah.
Okay. But at this point here, there are three ways to get paid in that model. The first one is the non-refundable down payment by the person you put in. That's payday
Right.
number one. Payday number two is the cash flow you're discussing. And payday number three is when they finally refinance out of the existing mortgage and get their own financing. Okay. In reality, that third payday very rarely occurs. Okay. So my money is obtained from the upfront as well as what little bit of cash flow is there. So it's really up to what you want to go for. I mean, I've had properties cash flows as little as like $16 a month, but you know what? Since I'm just a note holder, I just sit back.
How many of those properties have you seen fall into default and actually had to either pursue legal proceedings with it or had to really navigate?
Okay, you're touching on something I'm not proud of. There's a house in North Augusta, and I did lose that to foreclosure. I bought subject to. That's before this is how I found out that the property tax at least triples when the owner occupant moves out. Here's the key. When you do something like that, and I felt pretty bad about that, but my wife told me, she said, but did you actually provide some benefit? And I thought about it. This lady called me 4 times. I'd explain to her, Mrs. Harris, you have to understand, okay, you're deeding me your house, and if I can't make the payments, you could still go to foreclosure. And she just wanted out because she was already, she was about to fall into pre-foreclosure to begin with. So I ended up buying a house subject to and giving her a couple $1,000s, and she'd come in from California, so she went back out to California. And anyway, so what happened was the property taxes tripled on me, so I went into negative cash flow there, and I had to go through. Now, if you don't put an end buyer in the house and you just lease option to them, they're called tenant buyers. So I had to go through 3 different tenant buyers, and in the end, I just couldn't hold on to it. So one thing I did discover, though, okay, even though I still had the deed, I should say my entity still had the deed, because we didn't sign anything with the mortgage company, nothing happened to us. So, and again, it's not something I'm proud of, but it's something that's how it works.
Right.
Okay, and as long as you disclose everything to your seller, okay, I mean the good, the bad, and the ugly, you have it in writing. And what I do now is I even video record out of me or my attorney saying, you understand the mortgage is still in your name. You understand it's not paid off, blah, 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 okay. Then you should be good to go. And just let the seller know this could go wrong. And if they still want to do business with you, help them out the best you can. Don't bamboozle them and say, I promise to do this. Don't make promises you might not be able to keep.
Yeah.
That's what I learned.
So in what unique circumstances would you say that this subject to model is best fitting, right? Obviously in a down market, probably with a seller that's got some degree of distress, right?
I'd say absolutely. Don't get me wrong. If someone is willing, let's say, for example, you have a house worth, say, $500,000, and let's say they have like a $1,000 mortgage balance left, and they still want to sell it to the subject to. Don't say, oh no, there's too much equity. Take it. Okay, that's money out of your pocket. But at the same time, realistically, it is people who are mostly leveraged out, where there's not enough equity to be able to cash wholesale or cash rehab it to the end buyer. Now, in that case, something like that, let's say you're a rehabber, you could do something called split funding, where you give them a little bit of money up front and then the rest upon resale, stuff like that. But you just can't throw cash at something like that and hope to make money. So
a lot of different creative ways out there. So let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about what you do with the Midlands RIA and your goal in helping newer investors grow and get involved in the industry. What inspired that passion to start helping out newer investors?
Okay, do you really want to hear?
Yeah, let's hear it.
It's not really the best story. And again, this is something I'm not proud of. There was another RIA here that Midlands RIA actually broke off of. It was actually the one I first joined in the Columbia area. And what happened was it went through that recession, the 2007, 2008 one. And I still kept coming to the meetings. The membership in that one dropped off badly. And the owner of that one wanted to reinvigorate it, and he asked me for help, running it. And at the time, his wife was starting up one antique store in Chapin and one in Prosperity, okay? And it turned out he started letting me just run the whole thing while he would work with his wife on the antique things. And he just wanted to sell things over and over again. He'd bring in people to sell things every meeting. And obviously, since I'm out there presenting things, I didn't get paid a penny for this. I had no ownership in the RIA. Okay, I even paid a membership due of $200, if I recall. And but I kept presenting these, and obviously when things go bad with whoever's selling, because the original owner didn't own any of the products, okay, or services, people would look at me, and I'd be the bad guy because I was the one who presented at the owner's command.
Yeah.
And it got to a point where I said, this really blows. It's not what I really expected from a RIA. I want it to be educational. And also, people are looking at me when things go wrong. Okay, so I just broke off, and that's how Midlands RIA formed. I said I want to do it my way. And now the Richland Library, we spoke about that at lunch. Okay, the Richland Library is one of the best library systems in the nation. I remember I was talking to somebody who works there back in 2000. He said back in 2014 or 15, they got like a $70 million grant to renovate the whole library, and that's when they started becoming one of the best in the nation. What it is you have all these resources. The people there, the reference librarians are amazing. Okay, so when people say, in fact, I've had a couple people say, do you offer mentoring? I say, no, we're reference librarians. Okay, there are even local mentors here who charge like $25,000, $30,000. I think that's a bunch of crap. Okay?
Yeah.
You don't need a whole lot of money to get started in wholesaling, subject twos, or whatever. Okay, you need a lot of tenacity. I tell people, these gurus who make you pay like $25,000, $30,000 or whatnot, they want you to put on your credit cards, or they'll get you some cheap business credit. And remember that 97% failure rate I told you about? When, not just if, but when people start dropping out, the guru still has their money and they have to make credit card payments or whatever. I tell people, you don't need a lot of money to do this business or even get started. Earn it first, and then you decide if you want to pay for this guru's coaching.
Yeah.
At least you'll have the money in hand. You're not putting on credit that you'll make payments for.
Absolutely.
So that's what I believe. And that's kind of the philosophy of Midlands RIA. I really want to model it after the Richland Library. That'd be a dream of mine.
Yeah, so basically you kind of act as like the conduit, right? You're the person that could point somebody in the right direction to link them up with the right resource, the right mentor, the right system, the right tool, in order to empower them with what they would need to win and be successful.
Yeah, you got it right on the head there. I obviously don't know everything about the business. Like we were talking a little bit about like cryptocurrencies and the metaverse and whatnot, buying real estate in the metaverse. Okay, that just still blows my mind.
Yeah.
I know little to nothing about that. Okay, so if people said, okay, what's this metaverse thing? Well, I'll be honest with you, you'd be the first one I'd say, you might want to talk to Ben Lovro about this.
Yeah. For sure.
So I'll tell people, if I don't know something, I'll tell them I don't know it, but this person can give you a whole education in it.
Sure.